welcome to The Journey, a podcast to help you be the very best parent you can be. We are thrilled you are here and that we get to do life together. We are here to serve your family, and we're thankful you're joining us on The Journey.
Hey parents, welcome to this episode of The Journey. We're going to talk about some incredible things that God did on our Minimester trips this year. And I just want to kind of get you ready for listening to these particular things, because I need you to listen and pay attention to them in a particular way. But I want to set it up because I want to tell you, honestly, when I got here over 20 years ago, I remember hearing about Minimester for the first time. And to be perfectly honest with you, I was a little leery of this particular program for a number of different reasons. I mean, we're sending our entire high school all over the world on these particular trips. And it's like, there's a lot of bad things that could happen. And then spring sports and, players and coaches complaining about not being able to do that. Anyway, I listened to it, and it didn't take very long before a couple of years of just listening and watching and hearing the stories of those students and faculty coming back from these Minimester trips that I was 100% sold on this baby being the greatest thing that PCA did. I love Minimester. I would hear stories upon stories upon stories, and not just of our students going to different places and sharing the gospel and lives changed, but I would see our students and our faculty coming back from these trips, and they were changed as well. And I watched it. And so I just want to let you know, right, parents, I've been where you are, you lower school parents who are out at that Booster-thon fun run, and your kids are running around that track, right, for the umpteenth time as they're begging you for the next toy and the next level of giving, and you're thinking, what in the world are we doing? Can I just tell you the opportunities that pays for when your kids get to upper school and can go on that particular trip that's funded because of that Booster-thon fun run is such an incredible blessing. And then when you get to middle school and you start going on these different trips, right? And, fifth grade gets sixth grade and you're going, spending a couple nights at Sky Ranch, and seventh grade, right? You're doing man camp and frontier camp, and you're thinking, is my kid even going to eat? And then DC, can I tell you, I got to go with 3 of my own children to DC on the DC trip. And I've got stories upon stories upon stories about DC. But one of my favorite is just standing at the base of the Lincoln Memorial and watching kids run up the steps, right, from the reflection pool right up to the statue, and counting the steps, because I had just told them that there's a particular number of steps, and I wanted to see if they knew how many steps and why it was important. So when they got to the top, I'd meet them up there, and they'd tell me 87 steps. And I'd say, why is 87 important? And of course, none of the kids know why 87 is important. And then I told them about the Gettysburg Address 77 years ago. And then as we walked through the entire city of DC, they realized that every physical monument, right, had a representation of something bigger than that. And it was amazing, because then you can tie that into, right, the physical realities of the spiritual components that are going on in life. And it's such a great tie-in from a Christian standpoint. So I'm just going to tell you, right, these trips are amazing. There's such great teaching opportunities for our students, for our faculty. And the stories you're going to hear during this particular episode are going to be stories about how God pivoted, about how God did some different things through these particular trips. He's going to change locations for one. He's going to get somebody sick so that they can change the schedule. So their eternal destiny is going to be altered because of the appointments that God is doing. And I'm just going to tell you, it's amazing to hear. I can't tell you every story that I've heard on Minimester. We'd be here for far too long. We're trying to give you a few highlights, but I'm just going to tell you the highlights are amazing to hear, the changed lives that our students and our faculty come back, and the changes that they've left in those countries that they went. And here's the thing, sometimes it's right down the road of our students going on a local, right, Minimester trip where they're going down to a place that they never would have known that existed in their community, serving people that they never knew were even around them. There's people around you, right next to you, right, who need to hear the gospel and need to have a cup of cold water given to them in the name of Jesus. And there's people around the globe as well. So Minimester is a great and incredible experience, and I hope you pay attention to and you listen to the stories that are going to be shared with you during this episode. So we're talking with Eddie Jimenez, and the faculty perspective from Minimester is such a an important component, right? Because a lot of the parents, when we talk about Minimester, we always talk about the students and just the work that God did in the lives of the students, through the lives of the students. But as faculty, we go on these trips, right? And I've been to a lot of different places. This one was kind of special for you because Cuba is your home country, and you got to go back to Cuba on a Minimester trip. So tell our parents a little bit about kind of what happened on that trip and just kind of how you saw God work.
That's right. So I was born in Cuba, and I lived there for 10 years. I left Cuba in 1995, and I came to America March of 1995. And I had never gone back to Cuba, and I went back 30 years later.
Wow.
In March of 2025. So after
kind of
30
surreal.
Years, a little bit.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a bucket list trip because I've never seen the Cuban countryside. I was born in Havana, so I've seen the city.
Yeah.
Beautiful city. I've only seen the countryside in pictures.
Yeah.
So talk about God's glory, man. It's just unbelievable.
I've heard
God's
beautiful
creation.
country, yes.
It's one of the most beautiful countries I've ever seen. It's farmlands as far as the eye could see, beautiful palm trees.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did you see God do? Because you had some pretty neat experiences while you were there.
God worked through me in a very interesting way. So before we left on the trip, Pastor Shivers, talked about praying for a divine appointment.
Yes.
And that had impact on me. So I, leading up to the trip, prayed for divine appointments. On the plane, I continued to pray about that. I continued to pray once I got to Cuba. And God... He has a sense of humor.
He has a sense of humor because those divine appointments come in different ways.
That's right. That's right. So first day there, they served us meatballs, and they were pretty good. I was downing them, and about the third or fourth one in, I cut through it, and I was like, oh, medium rare meatballs. I've never had medium rare meatballs. And I was like, wait a minute. I don't think meatballs are supposed to be medium rare.
Yeah.
Kind of tastes like medium rare chicken, you know? So not a good idea to continue eating them. So I stopped eating it, and... by Wednesday, I got really sick. I was so sick. I had prayed, probably got up at 5 in the morning. I felt awful. I couldn't even get out of bed. And I was praying to God, please, God, use me. I haven't been back here in 30 years.
Yeah.
I speak the language. I could help people. We're doing such great work here. I could see lives being transformed right now. Not just for the people that were impacted in Cuba, but also our students and our teachers. Yeah. This is a very powerful trip. And I was just begging and begging, God, please, please let me go. Please let me go. I was on the way to the bus, probably about 8:30. I was like, I can't. I'm going to pass out. So I went back to my room, and, man, I was mad at God.
Yep.
And God could handle it. It's okay if you're mad at God. I was mad. I was throwing a temper tantrum at God in my room. I was like, why would you not help me go? Like, all these kids come so far, thousands of miles, to just lay in my bed for the entire day. But anyways, I continued to pray. And by about noon, I felt better. I tried to eat something. And I actually walked around the hotel a couple of times to see if I could not pass out or something. And so I called the Cuban pastor, the head pastor at the church. I was like, hey, man, can I get a cab? I'll do whatever at the church. You send my kids off with other chaperones, and I guess I could, like, paint your church, whatever you need, man. I'll just do anything. I just want to be helpful. And he's like, hey, don't worry about it. We'll send you a cab. Your kids will be waiting for you there. So I got there. It was probably 1:30 in the afternoon. My students and the Cuban translators and leaders were waiting on me. They've been waiting outside the church probably for about 30 minutes. And that made me feel horrible because they could have been doing stuff.
Sure.
You know, instead, they were sitting there waiting on me, and I was sad. I was angry at myself. I was not happy about it. But anyways, we're walking around. I'm talking to our leaders, our Cuban leaders, and I had one of those I am second pamphlets, those little booklets. We've given out hundreds of those, and I had one left in my back pocket. And I was praying, like, God, at the very least, make this one count. Yeah. Okay? Just tell me who to give this one to. And I'm talking to the translator, and I'm seeing lots of people. And then suddenly I look to my left, and in this porch, there's this older couple, probably in their 70s. And God was like, that one. And I wish I could tell you that the heavens opened up, and God was like, that one right there. That's not how it happened. I think that I think only Christians will understand this, but God puts a thought in your head. Yeah. And then he gives you the discernment to know whether that's your own thought or his thought, right? Yeah. So that's how he spoke to me in that moment. And I just invited myself. I walked right into the guy's porch, and I was like, hey, how's it going? My name's Eddie. I'm actually from Cuba, but I live in Texas. And are you guys Christians? So the wife said, yes, I'm a Christian. I read my Bible every day, go to Bible study. And then the husband said, yes, I know of Christ. And I was like, well, in my mind, I was like, I know of Michael Jordan. That's like saying you know of somebody. Yep. You don't know that person, right? Yep. I don't know Michael Jordan. So the next thing I said was, sir, if you were to die right now, do you know where you're going?
Yeah.
And in hindsight, that may have been a little strong, a little too forward, but that's what I said.
Yeah, that's the question you got to answer.
That's the question, man. I went straight to the point.
That's right.
So he looked at me and he got real serious, and he's like, no, but I'd like to know.
All right.
So I told him, if I were to die right now having a conversation with you, I know where I'm going. And it doesn't matter what I've done in my life, all the good things, the bad things. Because I've accepted Jesus Christ, I know where I'm going. And the truth is, maybe we'll never see you again because we live thousands of miles away.
Right.
But I would love to see you in heaven one day and continue this great friendship that we're starting here at this very moment. So we ministered to him, we prayed for him. And at first he was kind of joking about it a little bit, but I didn't really take it. I could be pretty goofy. I didn't give it back. I was very serious about it. You know, I felt like this was the divine appointment that I had prayed about.
Yep.
And all of our kids prayed for him, and I was really impressed with our kids, man. Like a bunch of little preachers running around. I learned so much from our kids. I think the best thing about being a teacher is not the stuff that you get to teach, but all the stuff that you learn from your kids.
It's amazing.
Fifth graders, man.
Yes.
I learned so much from them.
Yep.
All the time.
Yeah.
So I talked to him, and I got to sit back and have our students talk to him. Like Carl Goscheidel, he's one of my band students.
Right.
And he said, God is a painter. Leave it to the fine arts kids to talk about. Make that relationship between fine arts and
good connection.
And, he's like, God is like a painter, and he painted you. You're his holy and perfect creation.
Yeah.
And he wants a relationship with you. So we answered a lot of his questions that he had, and then ultimately he said, yes, I want to accept Jesus.
Oh, wow.
And his wife was just about to start jumping up and down, this couple in their 70s.
Yeah.
But he accepted God. And then when we left, it hit me. And I said to our kids, had I not gotten sick, you guys would have left on time. We would have left on time.
Yep.
Had you not had to wait for me 30 minutes, had the cab not been late, this guy would have probably been inside his house, and we would have never talked to him, right? So God could use bad things for his glory.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks that I felt awful all day, and quite frankly, I was a little bit concerned I was going to hit the ground when I was walking around Cuba in the afternoon, but he used that. Yeah. And had I not been sick, had I been on time, we would have never seen this guy. So he used all of that. So the moral of my story is two things. If you go to a third world country and they give you medium rare meatballs,
don't eat them.
Don't eat them.
Yeah.
And if you do, God could still use you for great things.
Yeah. Well, you prayed for divine appointments, right? And then the expectation is that divine appointments are on my timetable, right?
Yeah.
With what I see and understand. And God's just like, Eddie,
yeah.
I need you here at this particular time, and it's not in your schedule, so
here's some meatballs.
And I'll get you to the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Man, what a great trip, and what a great kind of opportunity for you to go back, to your home country and to minister to the people there. Beautiful, beautiful story. I love it. So thanks for sharing it.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got Eli Taylor here, and Eli, one of the things I want to talk to you about is not just your Minimester trip, but you're a lifer here at PCA, and so Boosterthon is one of the ways that we actually finance these particular trips. And I'll just tell you this, right? I've been here a long time. So before Boosterthon, sometimes it's like, why can't we do other things? Why do we have to do Boosterthon? I'm just going to tell you, right? There were a lot of different things that happened before Boosterthon, right? And all of them seemed like they were great ideas and would raise money, but they didn't. Boosterthon raises a ton of money. Okay, and that money, right, goes into account for the particular grade, right? And so Campbell's in your grade, and so when you guys were little, running around doing Boosterthon and running all those laps, right? And I remember running all those laps when we were checking your shirt off at the end, things like that, right? All that money that your class raised went into that particular fund, and then when you guys get to high school, right, then you get to access that money and go. And Campbell accessed his money this year as a senior. Right? Do you know if you accessed your money?
For the first time this year.
For the first time this year, right? And so as a senior, right, that money's just been sitting there waiting for you to go on a Minimester trip, right? And it's available for you to go. So fantastic. I love that. You remember Boosterthon, though?
I do.
Okay. Now, did you Did you take those laps seriously as a young person?
Extremely seriously. I mean, I was a soccer player, so all I do is run.
Yeah.
So I just kind of had to flex my muscles a little bit and just kind of run laps around people.
Yeah.
But it was fun because, I mean, it's just a day where you kind of hang out with your friends outside.
Yes.
I loved Boosterthon as a kid.
Now, when we were doing it, when you were young, right, we were over on like the soccer fields way off in the corner by Sonic, right? And then they moved over here to the football field, and now they're over on Champions Field, right? So I think Boosterthon, it's a lot nicer because you're not running on that grass and all those, I just remember allergies from the kids and all the different things. But anyway, they do a great job. It's a wonderful organization. But just as a great reminder, right, that money is there for those kids who are in those, running all those laps, right? When those kids get to be, high school students, right, your grade has all the money. It's divided equally amongst the kids in the grade that are still there. So I'm glad you got to access your Boosterthon Fun Run money. So.
I know. It really helped to go on Amazon this year.
Yeah. So you went to the Amazon. Let's talk a little bit about that, right? You and Campbell were on a boat for a week. Floating down, right, the Amazon River in Brazil, right? Tell me a little bit about the experience. What were you thinking about going into that? Why did you pick the Amazon trip?
So, actually, when I picked the Amazon trip, I wasn't a Christian.
Okay.
And the only reason
because you picked it in the fall.
Yes,
right.
In around October.
Yep.
And so, everyone always talks about how, life-changing it is, and, it's a trip you just can't ignore. So,
yes.
I need, a spark, because I knew I needed to accept Christ. I just didn't know how that looked.
Yeah.
And being on a boat with all those people, I thought would be a really good way to help with that.
Yes, and then what happened from after you chose the Amazon until you actually went on the trip?
A friend invited me to church one Sunday, and I didn't want to say no because if someone took the time to think of me and text me on a Saturday night, I'm like, oh, that's really nice, so I'll go.
Yeah.
So I went, and they started talking about the Bible and stuff, and I went to a Freedom Weekend, which is a church thing the next week, and I heard the sermon, and there was a specific thing he said about, with God, there's no being in the middle. You're all in or you're all out.
Amen.
And I'm like, oh, wow, that hit.
Yep.
And so that day I accepted Christ, and I got baptized 2 days later.
Yeah.
And that was a month before we left.
Yeah. And so now you're on a boat in the Amazon, and part of your opportunity is to go share the story that just changed your life. So what was that like for you?
It was really awesome because on that trip, I read my Bible, did a Bible study for the first time ever in my life. And the very next day, they told me that I'd be doing door-to-door evangelism, telling people about the gospel. I'm like, oh, wow. That's pretty quick.
That's pretty quick.
I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So people were like, just pray. Trust me, God will put the words in your heart, and you won't even know what you said just because God will have you there.
Yeah.
So the first time I did it, I'm telling you, I was so nervous. I was purposely in the back. I'm like, don't call on me, don't call on me. And it was this lady who, she knew Jesus. She knew the story, but in Brazil, it's very Catholic-based, so it's if I do good things, I'm a good wife, good mom, I'll go to heaven. So just being able to tell her that God's love is unconditional, it's given, it's a free gift, and all you have to do is believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins and that God is sovereign, and you'll go to heaven. All you need to do is believe.
Yep.
And
that's what grace is, a free gift.
I know.
Yes.
And when I told her that, she had a couple more questions about specifics, but by the end of it, she actually made the decision to accept Christ, and that is genuinely such a rewarding feeling because
that is so cool.
You're giving someone the keys to eternal life.
Amen.
And as someone who got that a month ago, it just feels really good, and to give that opportunity to someone else. And
that's so awesome.
It was so rewarding.
That's so awesome. Now, did you get sick on the trip?
I actually didn't. I was one of two boys who did not get any sort of anything on the trip.
It's okay. So it's one of the things, right? The Minimester trips. They sound amazing and great, but can I tell you, things happen on these trips, right? Kids get sick, right? We went on the DC trip for a number of years, right, where we take our 8th graders, right? And there was 3 or 4 years where tons of people got sick, on the trips. But it's amazing, the different life transformations that happen, even in the midst of bad things happening, right? We had, the Africa trip got, moved to Hawaii, and people are like, what? And God did amazing things, right, in Hawaii on that particular trip. We talked to Eddie Jimenez a little bit, before, and we were just talking about the whole divine appointment concept, right? And so it doesn't matter what you think the trip should look like. It matters, am I going to be available for God to be used by Him, right, no matter what happens? And so I know people got sick on the Amazon trip, but God did amazing things even in the midst of that. So pretty cool experience for you. What was any one takeaway that you thought was really kind of interesting as well?
Could I give you two?
Two, yeah.
I think, funny enough, I wasn't supposed to be on the Amazon Minimester. The soccer team has its own Minimester trip.
That's right.
I'm on the soccer team, but I tore my ACL right as the year started. First game. So with that, I couldn't play soccer. So I'm like, well, I could do something else. Let me try the Amazon. So that is like something in the moment I was like, oh, are you kidding me?
Yep.
But by the end of it, I'm like, wow, God really had a purpose. And like, as much as this does suck, it helped in the end. It's very beneficial.
That's cool. What's the other?
My good friend Tatum actually got baptized in the Amazon. So she talked to Mike Beeson, who was our leader. And she's like, this is a decision I want to make. And he got to baptize her in one of in the Amazon River, which is such an incredible story.
That's so cool. Those are great memories, great takeaways, great things for you. Just what a blessing. So I'm glad God did that work in your life and through your life on that particular trip. You'll never forget it.
No, I will not.
Awesome. Thanks, Eli.
Thank you.
All right, so we're with Tatum Samuels, and Tatum, you got to go on the Amazon Minimester trip as well, and you had a kind of a special experience on that particular trip. Tell us a little bit. One, why did you pick Amazon?
I picked Amazon because I'm really close with Thatcher Cron and Corbin Sparks.
So because of some of the students that were going, right?
Yes.
I always think it's kind of interesting, right, when students pick trips, right? Because sometimes it's, well, I want to go to, we had the Bahamas this year, right? It's like, I want to go to the Bahamas. Or like the Africa trip. A lot of people, right? I want to go to Africa. Sometimes it's just students that are going, right? And it's kind of as a senior, you get first choice. So you get to kind of look at that and kind of ask your friends and things like that. So that's what you kind of did, was like, who are the people that are going on the trip?
Right.
You picked a location because of the people.
I didn't even get to think about Minimester. Like, I don't even know how it came up. They were like, you have to go on the Amazon. Like, you don't get a choice.
Okay.
I was like, okay, guys.
Yes.
Like, and I was one of the last few people that got to sign up.
Okay.
Like, the second after people were calling me, did you get in? Did you get it? I was like, yeah, why? They were like, it just closed. It just ran out of space. I was like,
Well, it was a little bit larger trip than the year before.
Oh,
Campbell went
yes.
on the last two, and he said you guys took more students this time
yes.
to get a bigger boat. I don't know if you knew this,
No clue.
right? So here's the interesting thing. The year before, they took a smaller boat
Right.
with less students. This year, they took more students because they were going to be on a bigger boat, but the bigger boat, the engine broke. So you guys had more students on a smaller boat, and you guys were pretty tight.
You should have seen the girls.
I should have seen, yes. Yeah.
I got a picture of the hammocks. They're like stacked.
Yeah, bouncing
We're like-
against each other as you're going down the river.
If you wanted to get up early, it was over.
Yeah.
Like,
I love that.
awful.
Wonderful experience. But
Yes, it was
you
beautiful.
got to go down to the Amazon and tell me about some of the things that happened.
So, where should I start? Like, so I'm a new Christian.
Okay.
I had a few experiences with people in the church when I was younger that just, I didn't want to believe that there was this specific God. I
Yep.
wanted to believe
Yep.
there was a higher power, but not.
Church hurt, it's real.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
There's sometimes things happen, right? And
Right.
the message, right, gets broken up by the messengers.
Right.
So
It's
it's a total thing.
Massive game of telephone.
Right. And then once you get past, right, the messengers to the message and you
Right.
realize, right? So
Yes.
so that's happened in your life.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't really get past the whole, it's not the church that hurt me, or it's not God that hurt me.
Right.
It was the people in the church.
Yep.
It took me until, I think it was November of 2024 to start looking into it and actually be like, hey, like, he's there for me. And
Yeah.
my whole life, it's like I've been searching for this relationship that I thought I was missing. And I sat down with my friend Reese Glass. I was like, I feel like I've just been avoiding this relationship that's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
And she was like, obviously,
Yeah.
she's like,
Yes,
okay,
you have. Let's go.
sure.
Yeah.
What? So she's all like freaking out. She invited me to go to church with her. I still have the notes that I took that day. And it was really funny because Morgan was speaking, and she was on the Amazon trip with us. And I talked to her about it on I think it was the first day of the trip that we actually did ministry. I talked to her about it. I was like, yeah, this was the first day that I went, and I had the notes in my Bible, and she asked to see them, and I showed it to her. And she was like, this is the day that I spoke.
That's so cool.
I was like, yeah, I remember.
What a connection.
She's like, that's crazy. And later on that night, I was talking to Karen Beeson, and she asked to hear my testimony. So I told it to her. It took a solid, like, hour. It was long time. And eventually she was like, have you ever gotten baptized? I was like, I have not. One of my brothers has. Other one, he started like the classes to get to baptism. Both of my brothers were dedicated at Prestonwood, actually. And my mom was baptized at Prestonwood. But I just hadn't ever had the opportunity when I was younger. And then when I started straying, like, I never felt the need to.
Right.
And I was like, no, like, I've been wanting to, especially before I go to college, because UT Austin isn't exactly the ideal place to get baptized. And she was like, what if you got baptized here in the Amazon? I was like, that would be so cool. Yeah.
Yep.
And kind of just went in the back of my head. A couple days pass, and I was coming up from downstairs, like, total overcome. I wasn't the one speaking. Just stops out of nowhere. I turned to Karen. I was like, could I get baptized today?
Oh, wow.
Was not me. I was in the middle of a conversation with somebody else, just like stopped, turned. And she was like,
Yes.
what? What are you saying? She starts squealing. Morgan's like, what are you saying? Hold on, pause. And she's like, yeah, let's go talk to Mike. Like, we gotta. I was like, okay. Like, starting to get nervous. I was like, what did I just get myself into? Like, and I got to go and talk to Mike, and he's like, I love Mike. He's just like, okay, so, and like gets through this whole conversation with me, just like, he's definitely just doing it for himself, like talking so that he can get it out and hear it. And I'm like, yeah, like, I really want to have this.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And it was at the end of the third ministry day, so last village. And there was a storm coming, like you can see it in videos and pictures, like there's just thunderhead. Yep. But nothing was happening yet, no rain, no nothing. I get baptized, like the second I get out of the water, it just starts pouring.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy. And like, it was a beautiful moment. And like seeing the ways that God was moving throughout that whole trip was amazing. And I kind of got evangelized by some of the people in the villages that we visited. And because I would be like, hey, like, what's your relationship with Jesus like? And they would tell me these amazing stories. There's this one man on the day I was going to get baptized that morning, before I even asked Karen, I was just sitting there. I was ready to like do my job. And then he did it for me. And I don't even remember exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of, he was so confident in his faith, and it was so beautiful the way that he put it, and you could see it like in the way he shifted once he started talking about it. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it's so cool. You know, it's funny you mentioned being baptized in Austin, right? Because you're about to head off to the University of Texas at Austin, which is great. Yes, hook 'em horns. But I was.
Yes.
I was
really?
right. So I was never baptized as a child,
Okay.
and when I felt like my faith really had become my own, right, I was at UT Law, and so I got baptized in the quarries, which are outside of Austin, and I'm just saying, right, wherever you go, right, when God is calling you, right, you respond. And so mine was in Austin, yours was in, the Amazon. And that's just it's a beautiful picture, because it's just that idea that God is with you wherever you go, right? And your job is to stay faithful and to stay obedient. And so I'm proud of you for the decisions that you're making, right? And the process that you're going through. And I know that you're going to be a great light, of truth as you go down to the University of Texas and stand on that campus for God.
Thank you so much.
So I'm glad you had a great trip, and I'm glad you guys did really well. Just real quick question. Did you get sick while you were?
I actually didn't.
Okay.
I'm trying to think really hard. I had like a day where I felt a little bit off. I was like, nah, this is fine.
Yeah.
And like, I was good in like a couple of hours. But I think there was only one girl that got sick.
Okay.
But like Eli said, like almost all the guys were getting sick.
Yes.
Like poor Blake is sitting on the lower deck, just like dying in his hammock.
Yeah. I've heard lots of stories from it. Any one thing jump out at you that you remember other than your baptism?
Oh my gosh. It's just the way that the villages, like the people in the villages, the community, the way they responded to our presence.
Oh, that's neat.
And it's crazy.
Yeah.
Because you can really see the difference in American versus like these other cultures and how different we are.
Yeah.
Like just getting to go up and talk to someone at the door and not having to be like, no, we're not soliciting. Like, I promise. Like, we just want to talk with you. We want to have a relationship. But they just welcome us in. They just want to have this connection with other people. And the collectivist culture that I got to witness was so beautiful, and just getting to see, like I said, how God was moving throughout the whole week. And it was so cool.
That's awesome.
And it was just amazing to get to really step into those shoes of like, I am really doing this. Like, I'm in the faith. I can do this, and getting to talk about it and not feel like I'm lying to somebody.
Right.
It was an amazing experience.
That's awesome. Yes. I'm so glad you got to go. What a great experience for you.
Yes.
Thanks, Tatum.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, we're at the North Campus with Harper Glenn. Harper, your Minimester trip had a few adjustments along the way, right? Tell us, our parents, a little bit about the trip that you were on, what your expectations were, and then kind of what happened.
Okay, yeah. So I was originally planning to go to Uganda, but then there was an outbreak of Ebola, so we had to switch to going to Hawaii. Honestly, when I heard that like there was going to be a switch, I expected to go local. I expected to do Dallas, and I was fine with that because I knew that God had a plan for it. But I don't know, it was just so cool to see how God opened up the door for us to go to Hawaii. And then once we were in Hawaii, like it seemed like the whole trip was already planned out. Like just the amount of doors that were opened and the amount of like people we got to reach and churches we got to involve with, like, I don't know, that was a cool thing to see. But that was this major switch.
Yeah, a little bit of a disappointment though, because you missed something because of the switching. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I was really excited, obviously, like to play with all the kids and just be like into a different culture and just like get my eyes like wide and to see what that would look like. And so obviously I was sad about that. I was disappointed, but I hope one day I get to go back to Africa and just get to minister there because that's still a passion of mine. But
yeah, what about like your church had a D Now weekend as well?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so I do a word of the year every year.
So do I.
Yes, and so my word of the year was love. I wanted to love God better and then let that love fuel like my love for other people. And so we have like a D Now weekend that's called Focus. And the theme of our focus was called love. And I was like, oh God, this is so cool. I can't wait to go to this weekend. I'm gonna hear all about love there. And then the trips overlapped. And so I wasn't able to go to my Focus. And I was like, okay, God, I thought you planned this out. Like I was so excited to go to Focus, but now I can't go. But God really just opened my eyes to see how he sees people in Hawaii, like through our homeless ministry and things like that. And he really just grew my love for people, of just like truly seeing them how he sees them and loving them through the love which he's loved me. And I don't know, I just thought that was so cool that like God is not confined to an event, but that he can teach you things and show you things like no matter where you are.
That's so cool, yes. What's the one thing that you think that you took away from your experience?
I think my biggest takeaway was just being able to be the hands and feet of Jesus and get to, like, as I said, like love people the way he loves them. It's just, that's something that I get to bring back home. But also, it was really interesting because when we were making food bags for the homeless, because we did a lot of ministry with the homeless, we like wrote on them, wrote Bible verses, wrote encouraging messages, so that if they wouldn't talk to us, like they would at least hear the gospel still. And I was kind of expecting that more or less, that they wouldn't want to have a conversation with me, that they would have something like better to do, or they wouldn't be interested in hearing the gospel because it's like something they might have heard before, or they might have like judgments about. But every single bag I gave out, I was able to have a conversation. And every single bag I gave out, they were open to hearing what I had to say. And I just thought that was so interesting, that like it was just such a good reminder that people are more open to hearing the gospel than you think. And so just the reminder to take the love back home, but also just like be able to like go out and just share the gospel. Like the worst they can say is no. And even that, like they were way more open to think about it and hear from me than I thought I would. But.
Yeah, well, Harper, I love your perspective on it. You did a great job sharing with our parents. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course.
Hey parents, a big thank you to this episode's sponsor, Guidestone Financial Services. Guidestone is a fantastic organization that has been connected with and involved with PCA for a number of years. Their mission at Guidestone is to enhance the financial security and resilience of those who serve the Lord, which is people like you and me. They do retirement, insurance, and investments. And Dr. O.S. Hawkins, who is a PCA grandparent and the recipient of this year's Zig Ziglar Servant Leadership Award, was the leader and CEO of Guidestone for a number of years and is really connected with their Mission Dignity program. So check out Guidestone. All right, we've got Shay Planis with us. Shay, you got to go to Costa Rica. I want to know first, why did you choose Costa Rica?
I chose Costa Rica because I heard it was a really pretty place to be at, and I just heard great things about it all around from people who've gone there before.
Right, so as you're looking at all the different trips and things like that, any friends that went on that particular trip?
Yes, my best friend went on it, and then a couple other friends that I was close with also.
Okay, so you go down to Costa Rica, and one of the things that happens while you're there is you get to build a house. Tell me a little bit about that particular experience.
So we built a house in like 2.5 days, and it was just a blessing from God to bless this family because they never had their own home before. So it was just really cool, and it was hard work, and I used a couple of like the cool tools, so that was just like cool to experience.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so you're underselling it a little bit in terms of the hard work. Okay. About 15 years ago, maybe it wasn't that long ago, I got to go on the Costa Rica trip, and it used to be a kind of a sciencey trip and then a sightseeing trip and lots of different fun, right? And so went there, had a great time. The last day that we were there was a volcano that erupted. And no planes could get in and no planes could get out. And so the group that was supposed to build a house for a lady couldn't have their workers come in, right? And we were stuck there for 3 days. And so they asked our group leader, they said, hey, do your students want to build a house for somebody? And of course we're like, absolutely, we'll go do that. It was the hardest work that I had ever done from a physical, like manual labor standpoint. It was a ton of work. It was so much fun. Right? But I mean, like by the time you got back to the hotel that night, you were ready to go to bed.
Tired,
you were so tired. So it is a really amazing blessing, but it's a lot of work. So how many days, you did that for 2.5 days? And then what did you do the other time?
And then we went to this cool island, and we got to just be on the beach and play in the water. So it was like our little fun day.
Yeah. What was it like being in, it's a, I mean, relatively, modern, right? Sort of third world-esque parts to it, but modern culture down there. What was it like just to be in Costa Rica?
It was really hot a lot of the time, but I enjoyed like the nice weather, and it was just cool like seeing like the different culture of like how they do things and just a different type of places they go and like the different food that they eat.
Yeah. What would you say would be your one takeaway coming back here from your experience there?
My takeaway is just seeing like how grateful we are here in like our world today and how much that we have. And in any circumstance, the people in Costa Rica, like they have a smile on their face no matter what, and they're just like so thankful for every day that they're given. And so I think that's just really eye-opening to see that we're so grateful, and yes.
So you walked away with a little bit of gratitude.
Yes.
That's a great life lesson. Well, Shay, thanks for going on that trip and thanks for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
So now I've got Kaylee Smith, and Kaylee, you got to go on, ready? Well, actually, why don't you tell me what trip you went on,
okay?
Right? What the expectation was, and then where you ended up.
Yes. So when we were signing up for trips, I signed up for Uganda in Africa.
Okay.
And that did not happen. We ended up going to Oahu, Hawaii.
Okay. And why were you interested in going to Uganda in the first place?
Yeah, so my mom has a nonprofit there, and her and my older sister went a couple months ago, and they had a blast, and they loved it. So I decided that I should go.
Okay. So I love it. They had a blast, and they loved it, right? And they really did, right? But it was more than just, hey, Uganda's a really great time, right?
Yeah.
So there's a really, PCA has been going to Uganda for a number of years, and there's an amazing organization and ministry that happens there. So it's a really, really cool experience. There happened to be, right, an Ebola breakout nearby, and so it became kind of an unsafe thing to do. So the shift to Hawaii, right, what was that thought process like for you when you were kind of thinking, was it like that's disappointing? Was it like whatever God wants? Or what were you thinking when that happened?
There was a little bit of disappointment in that, but we got switched to Hawaii, so that's not a bad place to go.
Yeah.
And so I was excited to go to Hawaii.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what happened on the trip.
Yeah. So we went, and at first it was a lot of just like figuring out what we were going to do for the week.
Sure.
We served in a lot of churches, cleaning up some of the more like beautification stuff. One group, we helped move a shed like across a church. That was a lot of fun. And then further down the week, we did a lot more of like evangelism. Mm-hmm. We did beach evangelism. We went to different homeless shelters, and we would speak to the people there, hand out food packs. And so I liked serving with the people on the trip, mm-hmm. especially because we were all signed up to go to Uganda. And so it was a very willing to serve group. We were all there for the same reasons.
Okay, very good, yes. What would you say was your kind of one takeaway from just the whole experience, right? The mm-hmm. expectation, the shift, the opportunity to do what you did, kind of what would you say you learned from the experience?
I would say I really learned to trust in God's plan and be joyous in it, because throughout the entire trip, there were times I could have been like, oh, we're sitting here, we're in the hot sun, we're doing this, but I could just be joyful in that.
I like that. Very good. Did you think, as far as like the rest of the students that went and the chaperones, did they like handle that adjustment and that transition well?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. We all kind of went with it, like go with the flow. Yeah,
that's probably a good way to go with things, especially when, right, something major does happen, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I wonder where God wants us to go and what happened out of it. So I'm glad you got to go, and I'm glad you got to experience. And
me too,
I appreciate you sharing with our parents.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kaylee. So we've got David Madison, right? And David, you were on the Bahamas trip. And I want to ask you, one, why did you pick the Bahamas trip?
To be honest, I just picked the Bahamas trip because it was out of the country and it sounded pretty.
I wanted you to be honest, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I had the opportunity to go on the Bahamas trip. I ended up going with our sixth graders to Sky Ranch. But when they told me and said, hey, we need another chaperone for the Bahamas trip, I was like, yes. Because it sounded great.
Yeah.
Right? Uh-huh. I mean, I've never been to the Bahamas. What was your initial reaction? Had you ever been to the Bahamas before?
When I was like a little kid.
Okay.
And we went there on like a Disney cruise, and my older brother and I got lost, and so we almost got left on the cruise. That's a long story.
That's a long story.
We ended up making it, so I barely remember it, but I've been before.
Okay. You knew enough that, hey, the Bahamas, that'd be a great place to go,
yeah.
Right? So tell me a little bit about what happened on the trip, because I know from what I've heard, you kind of connected with a lot of the kids there.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So I always had the mindset that, I wanted to connect with the kids. Mm-hmm. And I heard we were going to parks and getting to play sports. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. Because my church had a trip. I think they went to, Jamaica or something. And they were talking about how they got to do that. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to go play sports that they play, not what we play. I want to go be bad at what they're good at and just have fun with them. And so turns out we get there. And first day, we go walk around the neighborhood to find kids to go to the park.
Yeah.
And I meet this kid. His name is Francis. He was 10 years old. And his niece, who was, I think she was 2. She was 2. And then her her older brother was 5. His name was Jaden. And the niece was Cece. So we meet them. And I was like, come on, Francis, you want to go to the park? And he was like, yeah, I'll go eventually. And I was like, okay, well, come down whenever you have the chance. So I keep walking, go find more people. Then I come back, and he's still at the little bench he was with his mom, who was working a food truck. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, Francis, you not at the park yet? He was kind of looked at his little his niece and nephew. He was like, I can't really go. And so I was like, you've got to watch them. He was like, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I asked his mom, I was like, can Francis come to the park? I'll help him, watch Cece and Jaden. And then she was like, yeah, that's fine. So grabbed Jaden's hand. He put Cece on his back. And Caleb was with me as well. So Caleb and I were watching the kids, and then we walk Francis down to the park. And so at first, Francis is kind of quiet. He won't really say much. He was just kind of he wouldn't say too much. And he would just kind of say his name and stuff. And so after a while, he started getting comfortable and saying that Caleb and I were taking good care of his niece and nephew. He could be okay, they're actually watching. I mean, I'm holding Cece and putting her on the slide, and Jaden's just running around and stuff. And so he's starting to kind of open up. And he asked me, he's like, you want to race? I was like, sure. I was like, you want to be nice and let you win, or you want me to beat you? He's like, go fast, man. So he run, I give him a head start. I beat him. But, he's just, I can see him opening up. He's just connecting, opening up. He's talking about how he runs track, and he runs the 400, and he likes to play basketball. And I was like, we play basketball. There's a basketball court over there. And he was like, I don't want to play, because he was still kind of shy.
Yeah.
So he's like, I don't want to play. Then time passes on. I'm taking care of Cece, holding her, walking around. And then I look up, and he's on the basketball court. I'm like, for having now, I want to play basketball. And he just started laughing and playing. And then so
all those barriers start falling.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So then we ended up, first day goes by, we walking back to the little, we took him to the house. So we walking back to the house because I wanted to make sure we took him back, because we told their mom that we were going to take care of them. So I wanted her to see that we weren't just saying that, we were really taking care of them. So we take them back. Second day comes by, Francis is there, but just Francis this time. So we see Francis, he's playing basketball, and we're talking to him, and then some kids come by. I'm thinking they're coming to the park, and they're like, no, we have track practice. There's a unit come. I was like, nah, I'll beat you guys. You don't want me out there. And they were like, oh, you're not going to beat Nero. You're not going to beat Nero. I was like, that your fastest guy? And you're like, I was like, all right, well, after practice, let's set up a race. And so Francis, was hearing the conversation. He was like, you're a cook, my guy. I was like, you think so? He was like, yeah, I think so.
Oh, wow.
And so
this is fun.
Uh-huh. And so their practice goes by, and then the kids on the track team are starting to get into it. Oh, they're going to race. They're going to race. I'm like, France, I'll give you $20 if I win. He's like, really? He's like, now he's thinking I'm going to win. Now all of a sudden I'm not cooked anymore. And so I'm warmed up, getting a little warmed up. Yep. It ends up Nero and his friend Josh were the fastest two. So we end up racing them. I win. And I'm like pulling out my wallet to give Francis the money. But I'm just like, how can I bring God into this? Because this has all been fun and connecting with him. Yep. But the reason we're here is to spread the word. And so I'm just like, how can I bring God into this? And it's like, as I'm pulling out my wallet, it takes a second to pull out my wallet. God just puts it in my head what to say. And I'm like, so Francis, you believed in me, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, Francis, belief goes a long way in life. Yeah. So I'm going to give you this $20, and I want you to remember that. Whenever times are tough, whenever you're struggling, that you can believe and pray to God, and he'll help you overcome anything you're going through. Yeah. So I give him the 20 and tell him that, and then that was pretty much it.
That's so cool.
Second day goes by, comes back, third day, and it was just much of the same, playing around. And I asked him how he spent the money, right? Just curious. Okay. He was like, I spent it on his niece and nephew. And I just thought it was so cool that he's 10 years old and he's putting other people before him. When I was 10, if you gave me $20, I'd be
it was all on you.
Can I go to Toys R Us? But that was really cool.
What a great impact.
He's just so mature. He's 10 years old and he's buying things for his niece and nephew. So
yeah, well, I'm glad you got to go to the Bahamas, not just because it's a beautiful country, but because of the impact that you had in the lives of those kids. I know they loved you and just the responsibility, right? Because some kids look at Minimester as kind of like, oh, it's a vacation, right? And it's not. Yeah. It's work. And that whole week, you were working and you were doing the work of the Lord, just impacting those kids. So I appreciate you going and the impact that you had.
Yes, sir.
Good job, David.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Journey. We hope this podcast provides information to help you raise your children, and it would help us tremendously if you would like, subscribe, share, and review this content on your favorite podcast platform. It is our pleasure to provide this information to our community, and we look forward to our next time together on The Journey.